What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Luke here for our weekly DFS live stream, this time for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. It's up there in Orlando, Florida. Pretty excited for this one because of the field, a little bit stronger than the Honda Classic. Of course, being in there in person was fun, but I'm kind of looking forward to being able to sit back on the couch and watch some golf. And who knows, I might venture up there to Orlando this weekend to see Saturday and Sunday. We'll have to see. I can see a couple of you guys already down there in chat. What's going on, Joe? Excited to hear your stuff, Luke. I'm excited to bring it to you. And what is going on, Corey? Hopefully you guys are doing awesome this Wednesday evening. I played some golf today, ended up making an eagle. I had a 320-yard drive, 250-yard three-wood into a 570-yard hole and drained the 18-foot eagle. So we're feeling pretty good today. Really didn't play good other than that, though. But that's all we care about. Let's go ahead and start talking about this week. First off, with a little bit of a review of the weather, which is going to be important for tomorrow, because tomorrow we have very easy conditions, and that's throughout the entire day, not just in the morning. You can see when they'll be teeing off right around 6, 7 a.m., assuming it'll be right around 6:45 a.m. It'll be 2 to 3 mile an hour winds. But in the afternoon, it really doesn't get all that much higher. It goes up to a whopping 5 to 6 mile an hour winds, which, of course, for your average day in South Florida, that is extremely calm. Unfortunately, though, there is going to be a little bit of a wave split, because on Friday, we get the complete 180. In the morning, you're looking at the usual 4 to 5 mile an hour winds. But in the afternoon, a true test of golf, right? 11 to 12 mile an hour winds the whole way through the end of play, which means that we will see a little bit of favoring towards the PM AM stack. So the guys that are teeing off in the afternoon on Friday, in the early morning, the afternoon on Thursday, the early morning on Friday, are going to see a little bit of an advantage. So we'll talk about that with a few of our player targets later on, but that's not something I usually like to have to see, right? I'd rather it be fair for all 4 days, of course, because it brings in unnecessary variance. But let's go ahead and hop into the player pool. Some of our key stats for this week. Let's go ahead and see if there's anyone down in chat. Luke and Nukes. Yeah, dude, it was a really warm, humid day down here, and I started to get really mad because I couldn't putt. I had 6 birdie putts out of my first 12 holes and couldn't make anything. I actually 3-putted 4 of them for bogey. So I was extremely angry. So I just started whacking away at the driver, and I hit some nukes out there, that's for sure. What is going on, Chris? Hopefully you're doing well. What's going on? All right, so let's start off with a review of the key stats. So nothing has really changed since the beginning of the week. We've seen a lot of reports from the course, and the rough there is gnarly. It is every single year, ever since they brought in a new superintendent a few years ago. Forget his name, but either circumstance, the guy is kind of like me, where he likes to see these players fail, right? He throws out the rough. He makes the fairways as thin as humanly possible. And we've seen the winning score the past few years reflect that. So we've seen that from the reports from the ground. The rough is as gnarly as it has been the last 2 years, which means that there's still going to be a huge emphasis on off the tee play, whether you're keeping it in play with your accuracy or bombing it out there and mitigating the effect of that rough. Of course, also with the approach play. Bay Hill is an extremely difficult golf course. It's not like it's really hard to hit the greens here. It's just slightly harder than the PGA Tour average course. But when you miss the greens at Bay Hill, you certainly have a huge penalty. So it's whether it's the chip off areas, the bunkers that are extremely hard to get out of there, or the greens that just have a lot of undulation. That's really the defense of this course. And also the wind. If you're playing here without any wind, it is gettable. You can take it to 7 or 8 under par. It's happened in the past. So tomorrow on Thursday, you might see the records be broken for this golf course. It would not surprise me. It's been very rainy down here in Florida. There's been storms all across Florida. Of course, I'm in South Florida, so I can't speak for Orlando, but typically when we have storms run through here, it's throughout the entire state. So I would expect it to be relatively soft. Again, we're going to see nearly dome-like conditions tomorrow. So if anybody's going to take it low, it's going to be on Thursday. A few other key stats I had my eye on was shots gained putting on Bermuda. Of course, we have these grainy Tiff Eagle Bermuda surfaces. Shots gained in windy conditions. It's hard to quantify windy conditions. So what I do is in my database, I'll flag certain rounds as extremely windy. And typically that'll be 15 to 20 mile an hour average winds for the entire day. I'll flag that as an extremely windy day. And what I do is I just take the shots gained for every player in that field, add it into a database. And that's what I call quote unquote shots gained windy conditions. And obviously for some players, they only have a few rounds in the sample size, like maybe 1 or 2. But for some of the guys like a Rory Mcavoy that have been on tour for a while, it's upwards of 50, 60 rounds, right? So we can actually glean something from that data. So that's why I have it in there. For some players, it matters. For some players, we don't have any data for it. Shots gained at Bay Hill, of course, the same story, right? It uses the Bay Hill flag, conglomerates all that shots gained data. And I'm looking at sand saves and fairways gained as well. Now let's go into the player poll. I'll catch up on chat before we hop into it. Colin James, if I'm dipping super low, would you consider Henrik Norlander? No, but there are a few guys down there I do like, so I'll make sure I tell you who those guys are when we get there. And if Joe says, if I'm going to play 1.6K guy, who do you like in that range to make the cut? So if I had to pick one guy to make the cut, we'll get to that when we get to the 6K range. You said your favorite's Aaron Rai, but you might go with Zach Johnson. I'm not sure I would be betting on either one to make the cut just because of the strength of field here. A lot of the guys in the 6K range are just volatile by nature, but sure, Zach Johnson, probably the most steady hand in the bunch, so I could 100% see that. And Aaron Rye's made a bunch of cuts of late, right? He hasn't looked very good. He's finished in the 60s, like 3 of his last 5 starts. But if you're looking for a cut maker, he might be your guy. So I totally understand both of those. Cash says, can't make it tonight, brother. Take this guy to 1,000 subs. Hey, appreciate you stopping by, leaving the comment as always. You're an OG here, man. You can, of course, not make it for one of these. That's all right. And yeah, we're getting pretty close to 1,000 subs. So if you haven't already subscribed, make sure you go ahead and do so. CBO says he loves Kazire. Yeah, I still like him. He's in my player pool. I don't think he's a safe play, though, right? Kazire's an absolute madman. He goes out there, he'll shoot +5 one day, -8 the next day. So I wouldn't use him as a cut maker. Let's just go ahead and say that. And I'll try and catch up on these questions before we hop into it. Ali Bro says, my favorite stream of the week. I appreciate that. Thank you. Colin says, best comp course. I would say what we had last week, PGA National would be number 1. Number 2 would be TPC Sawgrass, which we're getting next week. And number 3 would be Riviera Country Club. That's what I'm going with. Number 4 would be Quail Hollow because of a lot of the emphasis on those long irons. And Alu Burrow says Zach Johnson hasn't missed a cut here ever. Yeah, he didn't miss a cut ever at the Honda Classic either. And then he missed it last week. So as much as I love doing that, he's not as safe as we like to think because I got burned by that last week. That's the only reason I know that. CBO says, is the grass dog shit this weekend? No, it's Bermuda grass. It's beautiful. This course is absolutely immaculate. These players rave about these greens. They say they're some of the best greens in the world. So certainly not. The grass should be perfect. All right, let's hop into the player poll, though. So at the top of the board, I've kind of narrowed it down to my 4 favorite players. There's 2 guys I won't be taking. You can see, first and foremost, if you saw the fades video today, I am fading Victor Hovland. It's not a diss to his game. It's more that he hasn't looked good here in the past. Again, his best finish was a 40th place finish, 42nd, 49th. He deals with the issues around the green that are well publicized to this point. Again, he loses 0.8 of his stroke per round around the green, which is far from ideal. So for me, I'm not going to be playing him. I just like the guys around him a little bit more. Most notably, Rory Mcavoy. The guy's been an absolute machine at this course. I mean, he has at worst a top 10, which was last year. A bunch of top 5s. Obviously, the win there in 2018. So I like him more. He's going to be extremely chalky, but I'm going to be eating that this weekend. But even more so, guys, my favorite play on the slate has changed. It's no longer Rory Mcavoy. It's Jon Rahm, and it's not even close. This is probably the 5th straight week that I'm playing Jon Rahm. Pretty much every time he's on a slate, I'm going to be playing him because I think if you aren't, you're losing. You're doing yourself a disservice. He's clearly the best player in this field. He hasn't played the Arnold Palmer Invitational before, which is pretty strange. You would figure he would. But this is a perfect course for him, right? You can see number 1 at Bay Hill, number 1 recent form. And that's despite having a quote-unquote off week last week where he ended up shooting 5 under on the last day. So not last week, week before that. But he ended up really rebounding there on Sunday, which I like to see. The putter came alive. The ball striking was there for the entire weekend. But unfortunately, Jon Rahm is held to an extremely high standard. For him to finish in the top 20 of a golf tournament isn't really enough for most people. But when we're playing the DFS game, we're looking to cash, have a consistent bankroll. He's not only the most consistent player in the world, he's arguably the highest upside player too. So I don't think you need to overthink it. Jon Rahm should be higher owned than Rory Mcavoy. It really shouldn't even be close. If we were doing this and if I was predicting ownership at the beginning of the week, basing it on what these guys should be owned, I would have said 35% for a Jon Rahm. And we're getting him at half of that, at 18.5%. So I'm going to have about 40% Jon Rahm on this slate, if not more. He's going to be in all my main lineups. I thought that was going to be Rory Mcavoy at the beginning of the week. I have them rated as very similar players on this golf course. You can actually see my numbers like Jon Rahm a whole lot more than they do Rory Mcavoy. The one thing I'll say is that a lot of his good starts of late that have happened over there on the European Tour aren't baked into this data, right? Of course, the win also at the CJ Cup isn't baked into the data because we didn't have shots gained there. So take that with a grain of salt, right? These guys are probably a little bit closer in terms of their modeling than you see here on the spreadsheet. I'll be playing both of them. I just like John Rahm a little bit more this week. And I don't think I should really surprise anyone. Scotty Scheffler, I don't know if he's going to fit into my player pool. If I had to guess, he's not. Just because I really do want to try and get exposure to Hideki Matsuyama and Sungjae Im. If you guys saw the sleeper picks video this morning, I'm not going to reiterate it in full here, but Hideki, great course fit here, just hasn't had the putter at Bay Hill. If he can turn that around like he has over his last 24 measured rounds, could be in for a really big weekend. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about with the putter, he's gaining 0.3 of a stroke per round with the putter over his last 24 measured rounds. By far the best stretch of golf in his entire career. Sungjae Im, of course, was the chocolate busted last week, pissed off the entire industry. And as a result, he's only 11.5% owned at a golf course where he has multiple top 5 finishes. In fact, 2 third-place finishes in a row and a 21st place finish in 2021. If we completely ignore last week, Sungjae Im, somebody who should be 25% owned this weekend, we're getting him at nearly 12% ownership. So much like a John Rahm, it's that recency bias. And he really didn't play all that bad last week. Honda is one of the worst events when it comes to volatility. You guys saw the water out there, right? You miss a fairway by 1 or 2 yards, you have a 1.5, 2-stroke penalty at times. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to be going right back to him. Honestly, a lot of guys that missed the cut last week, I'm not holding it against them at all. And Sepp Straka, for example, who won that golf tournament, I'm not really giving him all that many props for it. It's just a volatile event. Good for him for getting that first win. But it's not like Sepp Straka is a world beater now. Because I had someone try to tell me this week that I had to play Sepp Straka because he was coming off of a win at Honda. And I didn't bother responding because some people are just too lost. Too lost for their own good. Sepp Straka is a decent player, decent ball striker, but far from a world beater. Will Zalatoris at $9,400. He's going to be extremely chalky. So I have him at 18.5% right now. Would not be surprised if he came in over 20%. He seems to be everybody's chalk du jour this week. Everybody's like, I know he's going to be chalky, but I'll still play Will Zalatoris. So usually those chalky plays tend to get even chalkier. There's people that'll be fading guys like a Rory Mcavoy because he's quote unquote super high owned. There's going to be guys that go out and fade a Sungjae Im after the missed cut. I haven't heard anyone that's fading Will Zalatoris, and that's myself included. I think it's a perfect course fit. If you take a look at the long iron ranges from 175 to 200 plus yards, he's going to be top 10 in all those categories, whether it's from the fairway or the rough, which is important. I think a lot of people, when they're looking at those proximity stats, because of the way that the PGA Tour delineates it, they'll look at just the fairway stats, right? It'll just be like the 175 to 200 yard range. It's all delineated. So if you're going to be looking at that data, you need to be looking at the rough data and the fairway data to get a big enough sample size, right? If you're just looking at one or the other, you can cherry pick stats. You can make your guys look really good, which I don't want to call people out. A lot of people do that in this data analyst industry. But if you want a true idea of how these players are playing, make sure you take all of that data into consideration. Terrell Hatton used to be the number 5 player in the world. That was actually after he won the API. Now he's in the mid-30s. So he's a completely different player. He probably should be in the 8K range at the very best of this golf tournament. And if he wasn't a past champion, I think he would probably be $8,500. So you're definitely paying up for Terrell Hatton, and he doesn't have the best form of late. It's all been over there in the Middle East, and he hasn't really made any splashes. It's been made cuts, a couple top 10s, but over there in the Middle East, over there on the DP World Tour, that's not nearly as impressive as some of the finishes over here on the PGA Tour. Matt Fitzpatrick, also somebody who's going to be extremely chalky, but anytime there's chalk and it's good chalk, I'm going to be eating it. I'm a proponent of trying to make your lineups as contrarian as possible, particularly if you're in some of these large field contests. When there's plays that make sense, you don't need to avoid them, right? You play the right chalk. Sungjae Im was a perfect example of this. I know he went out there and missed the cut, but I would play him a million times over again. Everything pointed to him having a very good week. And sometimes it's going to burn you, right? Like what happened with Sungjae last week. And sometimes with Matt Fitzpatrick, and I think it might happen this week, he goes out there and wins you the golf tournament. So Matt Fitzpatrick's actually somebody I fired an outright bet on. At the beginning of the week, his numbers were horrible. Pretty much every sportsbook, DraftKings especially, opened him at far too low of odds. But as the week went on, people weren't really getting action at that type of number. I ended up getting him upwards at 28-1. So I think that's a more than fair enough number for Matt Fitzpatrick. I can't use DraftKings because I'm down here in Florida, so it's an offshore book, but really do like that bet. I'm looking forward to that a whole lot. In DraftKings, I'll be playing him as well. Again, just everything points up to him having a solid week. He's really good on Bermuda. He's really accurate off the tee, also relatively long. And at this golf course specifically, has an incredible track record. I mean, 10th, 9th, 2nd. He has one miscut out of his last 5 appearances, and then the 13th place finish as well. And something to note about Matt Fitzpatrick is that a lot of these finishes from like 2017, 2018, even 2019, when he finished in second, that was when he was a completely different player. Now he's a top 30 player in the world. He was nowhere near that back in the day. All right, now moving down a little bit further, Mark Leishman's still a great play, core play. He's actually coming in much lower owned than I expected. So I'm looking at getting around 35% Mark Leishman. He's likely to be my highest leveraged play on all of the slate. So when it comes down to, actually, I don't want to say that. There's going to be guys I play that are like 0.7% owned that I'm playing like 10% of, that I have quote unquote like 15x the field of. But if anybody that has any significant amount of ownership, he's going to be my most leveraged play on the slate. Adam Scott, I don't understand why he's really chalky. Some other ownership sources have him even higher than 11.2%, but I don't understand why people are playing Adam Scott. I know he's played decent here in the past. He hasn't even played here all that often, right? He was 41st there, miscut there. He played way back in the day. He used to play this golf course a little bit more. I don't get it. It's not like he's been excellent of late. I mean, look at these shots gained metrics. I looked at this right before we came on air here. He's hardly gaining off the tees, gaining a little bit on approach, losing around the green as he always does, and carrying himself with the putter. And you guys know Adam Scott is far from a good putter. I mean, over the years, he's a compilation, like a whole highlight reel of him missing like 2-foot putts in clutch situations. So he's far from a good putter. I don't expect that to continue. You can see for his career, he's hardly a gainer on Bermuda grass. So again, I do not understand the price. I don't understand why people are running to the window to play Adam Scott. And if he's going to be over 11% owned, he's going to be a clear fade. Let's go ahead and catch up on chat. Tell a friend, best golf show on the YouTube. I completely agree. If we can get to 1,000 subs by the end of next week for the players, that'd be really cool. Why isn't Scott in your player pool? Just went over that. I don't understand the buzz behind him. I mean, look at the shots gained metrics here. Like everyone else around him is a lot better, especially if we take a huge sample size on it. If we go to the last 50 measured rounds, he's been pretty good with his approach play around the green, not all that good. The putter has, again, been really hot of late. That's what I don't really understand. But look at the guys around him. I mean, Matt Fitzpatrick, 0.45, 0.47. Also not as good with the putter as he usually is. Even guys up here like a Will Zalatoris, right? 0.77, 0.36. Sungjae Im gaining 2/3 of a stroke off the tee. It's just, there's guys that have a lot better numbers. And of course, that also have the course history. I mean, guys like a Sungjae Im have played really well here. Guys like a Matt Fitzpatrick have elite course history. Of course, Mark Leishman, who's won this event, has multiple top 5 finishes, whereas Adam Scott's track record is kind of dog shit. So it's a case of the guys priced around him. I think he's extremely overpriced. I think he should be like $8,200. I also think he should be like 8% owned. And he's coming in over that ownership and also overpriced. Joe says, Eileen Hideki, but Sungjae is an awesome play too. Yeah, I like both of them. That's why I can't get Scheffler. It's probably I'm fading guys like Victor Hovland. So yeah, I understand the play, but I'm gonna have both of them. But I can't play everyone up top, right? So that's why I gotta fade certain guys. I'm not gonna have as much Hideki and Sungjae as I would hope, just because I'm gonna have quite a bit of Rory, quite a bit of John Rahm. I'm probably gonna have 15 to 20% of both of those guys. So we'll have to see. Corey says, I heard Scott had a short putter in his bag yesterday. Yeah, they fade him, right? So I didn't know this. This is great. This is a great thing to know. If he's changing the putter, like if he's not comfortable with the thing that's been carrying him of late, that's even worse. Like this guy could finish dead last. He could shoot an 80 tomorrow, and it wouldn't surprise me. Thank you for letting us know that, Corey. That's an even bigger red flag. If it were Aaron Wise that were changing the putter up because he's been putting bad the last 2 tournaments, and he had that magic broomstick working, then I would understand it. But Adam Scott has had that long putter his entire career. That's very, very concerning. Holy crap. Thank you for letting me know that. That's very concerning. I'm going to have 0% Adam Scott. 0. It'll be a complete fade for me. Colin James says, I've got 33% Keith Mitchell. Is that too much? No, because he will be relatively chalky, and that's right about what I'm going to have. Chris Palmer says, Scott or Horschel in cash. Horschel should have answered your question right there. I think Adam Scott's probably the worst play on the slate. After hearing that news with the putter, that's ridiculous. And you just made it. Have I missed anything? We've gone over some of the studs up top. But we're still in the 9K range. So, of course, when we're going over the lineups later on, we'll be talking about some of those studs. And if you want to know about anybody specifically, Chandler, make sure to go ahead and put it down in chat. I'll make sure I cover them for you. All right, cool. And you said not a problem, doing what I can. There you go. Yeah. That's always good news to know, guys. When people are changing up their equipment, that is not a good sign. Like, there's no circumstance where that's going to be a good thing for them. The only time in history where that's worked out was when Colin Morikawa changed the irons when he went over there for the Open Championship. But he had a whole week to adjust, and he almost won the week before that. So there's going to be outliers to that situation, but every other time you've seen somebody tinkering with their equipment, it usually doesn't work out very well for them. Or at least at the short term, right? They'll figure it out long term, but that first week or so, oh boy, does it not look good. All right, let's go down to Billy Ho. So I still like Billy Ho this week. We were on him last week. He hardly made the cut. After day one, he was in like 5th place, ended up making the cut on the number. So definitely gave us a little bit of a sweat. Seeing that sweat in person only made it just that much more nerve-wracking. But $8,900, I think it's more than fair for him. He's always good down here in Florida. He does a good job of keeping himself out of trouble. And like I said before, you don't have to be a bomber here. If you're somebody that can get it done with the accuracy, that's also going to be enough. But the thing with Billy Horschel is he's gained distance. Last week, I saw him unleashing drives of 320, 330 yards, which is really impressive for Billy Ho, especially as somebody of his stature. So with the over half a stroke gained per round on Bermuda grass, he's still been very accurate with that driver, even with that increased distance. This could be the year of Billy Ho. I mean, the guy's one of the best short game players in all of the PGA Tour. He's been really decent off the tee. Now he's even better off the tee. In fact, if we take a look at these last 24 measured rounds, he's gaining over a third of a stroke per round off the tee. In fact, it's become his best asset. I mean, still the putter, but it's other than the putter, it's became his best asset. If he can channel into those irons, which he was known for his entire career, I mean, watch out. This guy could vault himself into the top 10 or even top 5 of the official World Golf Rankings, and I wouldn't be surprised. He has that type of game. Really, the missing piece was the off the tee play, and now he's gaining a ton of strokes off the tee. It's scary for a lot of the other players on tour. I forget who said that. Somebody mentioned this like 4 months ago on PGA Tour Live. I want to give him credit for it, but one of the announcers who knows Billy Ho was, going on the range at TPC Sawgrass with him all the time, was talking about that, saying like he's going to break out this year. And I kind of rolled my eyes, but the things we're seeing from him of late, especially with the off the tee play, I mean, I agree. I tend to agree with him now. It's not something that I'm dismissing anymore. And by the way, next week for TPC Sawgrass, we're going to be all in on Billy Ho. That's his home golf course. And you guys know how bullish I am on him already. All right, let's talk about Sam Burns. He's missed 3 straight cuts. So if we take a look at the recent form, you're going to see why he's low owned. I completely get it. If you want to fade him, completely understand. But if he can turn it around, he could easily win this golf tournament, much like a Billy Horschel, much like guys like a Mark Leishman, Matt Fitzpatrick. He fits this place like a glove. I mean, take a look at these Bermuda numbers. It's why these guys are such great fits here. You can see he's the second best of the bunch of these 4 power putters on Bermuda grass. And the X factor that separates him from these other 3 is that he's a bomber. He hits it out there 330, 340 yards when he wants to. And when Sam Burns has that driver working, he doesn't miss many fairways. So that's why at the Genesis last year, not this year, obviously, it didn't have quite a good performance, missed the cut this year. But last year was in contention after 3 days. It's why we saw him in contention at some of these difficult tracks after 1 or 2 days. If you're looking for first round leader bets, I think he's probably the best value on the board. Also pretty decent value in the outright market and here on DFS, where he's the lowest owned option of anybody in this range. Of course, he has the highest risk involved, right? He's somebody who's the most volatile of anybody in this 8K range. But in terms of upside, he has by far the highest upside. So make sure you're playing him in large field GPPs. I wouldn't be playing him in single entry stuff unless you're willing to take on that type of risk. You kind of know what you're dealing with there. But I love the play. I think that if anybody's going to turn around that streak of missed cuts, it's going to be a Sam Burns. Max Homa has been really good at this golf course. You can see the last time he played here, he finished 10th. He had a 24th place finish in 2020. He's always got the long irons working. Putting on Bermuda grass isn't his specialty, but he still gains to the field in that category. So the ball striking has been there of late. That's really what's carried him. You see the approach play hasn't been quite as stout as it should be, but the off the tee play has made up for it. And if there's one thing that Max Homa is known for in his career, it has been that iron play. So I would expect that to rebound. Again, if we take a little bit of a larger sample size for Max Homa, you see it return to form, right? Back to a quarter of a stroke per round on approach. The putter has also significantly improved over his last few months. You can see he's gaining nearly a third of a stroke per round in that category. So if he continues that, gets back to the irons that we used to see there in 2021, could be a really solid play this week. And again, a lot of people like to play him on the West Coast. Kind of has that narrative to him, that vibe a little bit like that. again, he won the Genesis last year. Makes a little bit of sense, but I also like him over here in the East Coast at golf courses that prioritizes his game. Russell Henley, I understand. I'm just not going to be, I can't play everyone in this range. I think he's going to be a little bit chalkier than he should be. I think this 10% right here, 9.9, might even be a little bit low, mostly because Taylor Gooch, if I can fit him into my player pool, I actually like a little bit more. I like the ball striking there. On the putter, might not be nearly as hot as a Russell Henley on the surface, but I like the ball striking numbers of Gooch more. And down here with Jason Kokrak, he has elite course history. I mean, take a look at this. The guy was not a very good player at the beginning of his career, but he still made a cut here in 2017, miscut. We can give him a little bit of a break for, since it was before Kokrak was any good. But look at this, 2019, he really wasn't himself yet. 10th place finish. 2020, it's really when he started to become Jason Kokrak, the one that we know today. Top 20 finish. Again, last year, a top 10 finish there with an 8th. I love to see that. I like to see that he's trending upwards in terms of his finishes. And he's a completely different player than what we used to see back in the day. So somebody that I'll be buying in on. Paul Casey's a fade for me. I understand the play. He's a solid ball striker, but even with the solid ball striking, he hasn't really done anything. I mean, when's the last time that he cracked an optimal lineup in DFS? I can't remember it. Literally, it's probably been years at this point for Paul Casey. If you've been playing European Tour stuff, he's been in a bunch of those optimal lineups, because the difference between a top 10 here on the PGA Tour and a top 50 over there on the European Tour, they're about equivalent, right? The fields are so much less deep. The highest quality players are a solid 20, 30% less effective than the, let's say, highest tier players over there on the PGA Tour. So I don't take a lot of that data seriously. I get crap for that sometimes. People are like, oh, you just dismiss the European Tour. Yeah, it's like the AAA baseball league. You don't look at AAA baseball players' stats and try to project that into the MLB. There's guys that hit 350 in the minor leagues. There's guys that hit 50 home runs in the minor leagues. And when they get called up to the major leagues, can't hit 150. There's different levels to this game. And that's what I equate it to here with golf, especially with like the Korn Ferry Tour, right? We don't take that data and use it as gospel. And I would say that some of those Korn Ferry Tour fields, and of course with official World Golf rankings, we're going to be nowhere near the same field strength. But in terms of talent, I'd take a whole lot more of those Korn Ferry Tour guys than a lot of those guys in the European Tour. And that's just facts. And you'll start to see that over the next few years. This Korn Ferry Tour, the guys that are down there at this point are just unbelievably talented. Let's talk about Keith Mitchell, because he'll be the clear pivot off of Paul Casey for me. You can see the modeling loves him a lot more than Paul Casey. And he's actually done something of late, right? He's gone on a stretch of golf where he's made a bunch of good performances. This is his course history. You see he has multiple top 10 finishes there, but his recent form, even more impressive. Top 10s in 3 of his last 4 performances. Did have the miscut at the Farmers, which is slightly disappointing because that should have been a good golf course for his game, but he's trending in the right direction. He loves this golf course, like I said, has 2 top 6 finishes in his career here already. At $8,100, I actually think he's a little bit underpriced for the field. Could have easily been closer to $9,000 given the recent stretch of form he's on. Again, he's number 2 in the field in recent form rank. Top 16 at a fit at Bay Hill. He's got the elite course history. He's used to Bermuda. He's from Georgia. He lives in Sea Island, Georgia, so he's used to these Bermuda Tiff Eagles surfaces. So I know the guy before, he said he had 33% Keith Mitchell. Sounds about right to me. That'd be right about double the field. And he's a piece of chalk that I am eating. And you guys can tell there's quite a bit of chalk I'm eating, right? We're eating the chalk with Fitzpatrick. Same thing with Keith Mitchell down here. We're also eating the chalk with Will Zalatoris. And I guess you could even say Rory McIlroy's chalk that we're eating. So we're going to have to differentiate with the guys down low. So you'll see that when we get down to the middle and bottom range of this field. That's where we're fading some of the chalk. That's where I'm trying to differentiate myself, because if you're going to take shots on players, do it with the lower quality players, right? The guys up top that you know are solid plays, they're safer. They're more expensive for a reason. So if I'm going to try and differentiate, a lot of times I try and do that down low. And this week is a perfect example of that. Let's catch up on chat, because I've been rambling for a while here, guys. Looks like we have a strange human being in the chat. Let's go ahead and block them, because that's just a weird comment. All right, let's see. Matthew says, we need these guys alive by the course, and if there's a home course section, it has gone a little late. Oh, so you're saying if there's a section of these sheets where I can like say who lives near the course and whatnot, that's something I consider doing in the future. Some of that data is hard to come by just because not all of it's published out there, right? Not everyone's talking about where they live, but I can put something together. Maybe I'll do it on the Discord. I'll post something down there in the Discord where it's like, these are the notes of people that I know are local and whatnot. But that is a really good idea. I like that a whole lot. Colin James says, John Rahm got a new putter too. That's bad. That is a bad look. I didn't know that. I didn't see that. I'll have to confirm that. But yeah, that would be something. That would be with a John Rahm. Joe Hoffman says, are you going to be over the field in St. Burns? Absolutely. He said, tough to eat when he's really struggling. Not really. In large field GPPs, those are the exact type of pivots that I'm looking for. And it depends what contest you're in, right? If you're in a single entry contest, you're playing a high dollar contest, right? If you're playing like 30, 40% of your bankroll of a week in one lineup, he's definitely not the guy to go to in that situation. But if you're playing 150 lineups, right, where you're spreading a ton of exposure, those are the exact kind of guys I like going to. Because if there's one thing we know about golf, it's a volatile sport. Shit happens when you get to a golf tournament, and particularly at a golf course like this that has so much volatility in play with that wind. Those are the kind of plays I like going to, and it's really served me well over the long run. A lot of my biggest GPP wins have been when I've played low-owned guys up top. Most notably, Victor Holland. He was like 9% owned when I won my $25,000 win there. And most notably, when I won my $150,000 in NBA, I played a Furkan Korkmaz at 0.04% ownership, and I had him locked. So you got to be willing to take those stands to win the money. So it depends what contest you're in. So if you're in single entries, that kind of thing, definitely think he's too risky to go to. But if you're in those large field contests, that's what I'm looking for. Miss Palmer says Lanto or Glover in cash. Lanto. Chandler says thoughts on fading the top of the board and the first guy being Zalatoris or Fitz. I've been asked that question a few times this week. I hate the idea. So I'm not gonna try and make you feel good about it. I hate the idea. I think one of the winners is one of the guys up top. He said agree on Paul Casey. He was high at the beginning of the week and now he's out of my pool. Yeah, I knew you had him at the beginning of the week, but of course so did I. He was actually in my player pool as well. I was thinking about writing him up as a core play, but I did a little bit more deep diving into it, particularly with the ownership. It started to make him a fade. How do I feel about Kirk? I think he may be a little bit chalky. We'll talk about him here in about 2 minutes when we get down to him there, number 33. But I'm okay with the play. I just don't love it. Aaron says, what's up, Luke? Getting excited? Yeah, man, I love talking about golf, guys. Wait till next week with the Players Championship. That's the first golf tournament I ever went to in person. It's what made me fall in love with the game. So I'm really looking forward to it. And am I excited by Kirk at all? Yeah, we'll talk about it here in a second. I think he's going to be like the chalk mid-tier play of the week, which means he might be like 10 to 15% owned. I have my rate around 10% right now, as you guys can see on the screen there. We'll have to see. And Matthew says, everyone smash the like button. Could not agree more. Go make sure you guys go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Joe Hoffman says McNeely versus Woodland for single entry. That is a really good question. We'll talk about that here in a second. I have both of them in my player pool, as you can see. I'm a little bit more excited about Gary Woodland just based on what we saw last week. The guy was in control of his game, but he just wasn't sharp enough. He was hitting a lot of iron shots to 20, 25, 30 feet. He was hitting all of his drives in play. He was hitting a lot of driving irons really well off the tee at the Honda Classic. So you like to see that, but he's got to be a little bit sharper, right? He's got to be putting those irons to 10 to 15 feet rather than 25 to 30 feet, and he'll have some success. So I would say Gary Woodland, but I like both of them a whole lot. And Chandler says, who is the dude you posted in chat? He stepped on something at the golf course. I have no idea who you're talking about. Make sure you go ahead and jog my memory down low. I'm not sure you're talking about Chandler. All right, let's go ahead and keep going down the board here. Go ahead and jog my memory, by the way, Chandler. I'm sure I mentioned something, but not that I can recall. Sergio Garcia at $8,100. I like the long iron play. Just in terms of Paul Casey versus Sergio Garcia. So this is really going to drive home the point with Paul Casey. They're literally the same player. Like, they do the same things well. They're both good with the iron play. They're both relatively long off the tee. They keep the ball in play, and they're both dog shit putters, right? Why the hell is Paul Casey twice as owned as Sergio Garcia when Paul Casey's more expensive than Sergio Garcia? And Sergio has had very similar success over there in the Middle East than a Paul Casey. Doesn't make sense, right? And you get in some of these situations when it comes to ownership, it makes it a very easy play. So that's why I'm getting over on a Sergio Garcia, because I like these ball strikers, right? I'd love to play both of them in my player pool, but not when one's 16% owned and one's 8% owned. Some people down in chat will be like, oh, it's only 8%. That's twice as much ownership, okay? So there's different ways to frame that there. And when it comes to leverage, you're going to have to allocate 30 to 35% of your lineups to get leverage on a Paul Casey. Whereas with Sergio Garcia, that's 15 to 20%. It's much more doable. It has much less opportunity cost involved as well. So it's not just the cost of $8,300 and $8,100. You also have to factor in who it takes out of some of your other lineups. Cameron Tringale, I absolutely hate, refuse to play him. Every time I play him, he goes out and misses the cut. And every time I don't play him, he ends up coming in the top 5. So that tells you anything. I'm not playing him this week. You probably want to be playing Cameron Tringale, but I mean, the course fit's atrocious. He's short off the tee. He can be accurate off the tee, but his long irons are far from ideal. Tommy Fleetwood, I'm not a huge fan of either, particularly because the recent form hasn't been good. If you take a look at the Honda Classic, he ended up missing the cut there in that weak field, and that's a golf course we had a ton of success at in the past. The difference here is that he's going to be let's look at the last 50 measured rounds for Fleetwood. So this should really drive this home. I mean, this is a huge sample size. This is over about a year and a half sample size for Tommy Fleetwood, losing on approach, losing with the putter, nearly a third of a stroke in both categories. He's hardly gaining off the tee, and he's hardly gaining around the green. Based on his PGA Tour stats, Tommy Fleetwood is a $6,000 golfer. Maybe worse, maybe like $6,500 golfer. Now, he's got the name credit. He's, of course, won over there in the European Tour. We've seen him in Ryder Cups. We know he's a much better player than that. But if we're just taking a look at the pure numbers, I mean, look at this. He's almost in the bottom 100 of the field. In terms of total modern ranking, he's at number 91 in the field. That is atrocious. That's about as bad as it's going to get. So how he's $7,900, how he's still getting greater on 8% ownership just baffles me. I think part of it is because Jason Day withdrew. So some of the ownership that was going to Jason Day pivoted to people like a Tommy Fleetwood, up to guys like a Tringale, also down to guys like a Maverick McNeely, but I don't understand the play. Again, there's per the numbers. I'm a numbers guy. The numbers look absolutely atrocious. We just talked about Gary Woodland and Maverick McNeely, so I won't go into huge detail there. Christian Mazainhout is the trap play of the week. It looks like everybody wants to play Bez. They think that he's just young, up-and-coming stud. The fact of the matter is he's been around for a few years now, and we've just been waiting on him to break out for these last few years. Much like a Tommy Fleetwood, I think he's a little bit of fool's gold. He tends to look better than he actually is because of those European Tour stats. And if you can't tell, I think the European Tours are jabronis. I think that they're inferior players, not even close to what these PGA Tour players are. So it's not a surprise to see that I'm fading them. And again, it's nothing against that tour. It's just very evident. You send PGA Tour players over there and they dominate those fields. I mean, Colin Morikawa won the championship over there on the European Tour, and he played like 5 events. That's a disgrace to their tour. I think I should tell you everything you need to know about it, to be quite honest with you. He says, Fratelli guy. Yes, thank you. So there's a spot on the golf course that has Arnold Palmer's name on it and has his umbrella. It's on the range, and no one is supposed to play there. It's like an unwritten rule. Everyone knows you don't go there. It's like sacred ground. Last year, Fratelli practiced in that spot. He went out there and missed the cut. He did the same thing 2 days ago on Monday. Very likely to go out there and miss the cut. Yeah, Corey Gray says, the sacred spot. Yeah, dude, I'm fading him. So he was in my video as a value pick. He's still in my player pool technically on the sheet. But when I'm actually going to play my lineups, he won't be in them. Seriously, you shouldn't be doing that type of thing. It's like stepping on someone's grave. It's the equivalent of what Jackson Mahomes was doing when they had that tribute for Sean Taylor. If you guys remember that over there at the Washington Football Stadium, they had like a memorial set up for it. He was doing TikTok dances on it. Of course, the Chiefs almost lost that game. In fact, they may have actually lost that game. And that's what you get. That's what happens when you disrespect people, especially people that are passed away and legends of the game. That's what happens. So Dylan Fratelli, he's on my shit list. Honestly, he's probably my least favorite PGA Tour player right now because he's a disrespectful fuck. But yeah, I'm not playing him in DFS either. Matthew Madonna says, what strategy would you use in the $90 satellites to the 555? Great point. So it's a smaller field contest. I'd be willing to take a little bit more of the chalk in that type of contest. I'd also be just be trying to take my core plays, right? The guys that you feel the most convicted in this week, regardless of ownership, I'd be going with them. And again, it's that smaller field contest, so I'm willing to do that. It's not really a large field GPP type of strategy because you're just trying to get as close to the optimal as you can there. So it's almost a cash lineup is what I'm going with there, Matthew. All right, let's go a little bit further down the player pool. Sorry, I got mad at Dylan Fratelli, but you just don't do that type of thing. Fires me up a little bit when people are disrespectful. Justin Rose is very good with the long irons. That doesn't look like it if you take a look at his 2021, 2022 numbers, but historically very good with those clubs. So perhaps he puts up that type of performance this week. And like I said, you don't have to be a bomber. He gets it done with the accuracy. So if he can be accurate off the tee this week, he'd be more than willing to get that done. Cory Connors is one of these guys who's in bad recent form, but you wouldn't really know it. He's still number 13 in terms of recent form rank. And one thing I'll say is that this isn't just based on pure shots gained metrics. It's a weighted shots gained. So the way that I do this recent form rank is it takes into account ball striking a little bit more than it does around the green. Putting would be like number 3 on the list in terms of the major shots gained categories. So that's why he gets a little bit more credit than some of these other guys. In terms of pure shots gained, I'm almost sure that Kevin Na would have more shots gained than Cory Connors of late, but that's not necessarily applicable to this golf course. So again, the recent form is much better than people are giving him credit for. Over these last 24 measured rounds, he's gaining 0.6 shots per round off the tee. He's still gaining with the approach play. And the putter has been a positive, which is extremely surprising for a Cory Connors, but that's been reality for him of late. And historically, he's a much better approach player. If you take a look at the last 50 measured rounds, he's getting over a third of a stroke in that category. And if you take a look at the last 50 measured rounds before that, he's getting over half a stroke per round on approach. So I like it. I like the bounce back spot there. I like him more than a Seamus Power just because he has more distance than Power. He's also a little bit more accurate off the tee. And on Bermuda grass, of late, he's been a gainer, right? Cory Connors last year at this same time went on a huge stretch of golf after the API, ended up finishing, was it 3rd place here last year? Let me confirm that. Yeah, he finished 3rd place here last year and then went on like 10 straight made cuts. He ended up making like 24 out of his like 28 next cuts. It was just ridiculous. The guy was an absolute cut making machine, posting top 25s pretty much every other event. And perhaps he gets back to that this year. I hope so. He's one of my favorite players on tour. Cameron Young's the most mispriced player on the slate. You can see he's number 2 with my total model rank here. I placed an outright bet on Cameron Young. We're going to learn a whole lot about him this week because this is a golf course that fits his game. He's in unbelievable form. Last week's performance at the Honda Classic was very impressive because it was such a difficult golf course. So we're going to learn a whole lot about Cameron Young. If he goes out there this week and ends up killing it, posting another top 15, top 20, that type of thing, he's going to start to get a ton of respect from the sports books and, of course, in the DFS industry. So if you're looking to buy in low on Cameron Young, this might be the last time you're able to do so because he might just be an $8,500 golfer for the rest of the season. That might be his potential. That just might be where he's priced at going forward. So let's see if there's any other questions down here in chat. Sam Irwell says, who do you like the best out of these guys, Young, Bradley, or Kirk? That would be Young, not even close for me. Absolutely love it. Nick says, if you missed out on this earlier, thoughts on Ham this week? The recent form hasn't looked all that good. Even on the European tour, he hasn't done all that much. So I just like the guys priced around him a lot more. If you want to play Haddon in a few lineups because he's super low owned, of course, he's a recent past champion at this event. I totally get it. I just won't be there. I don't have enough space for him. Gabriel says, how do you feel about Paul Casey in a single entry where ownership isn't going to matter? Okay, that's good to know. Casey, Bez, Sergio, Cam Young. Casey is the best course history with this 10th place finish. Yeah, so that I'm assuming that was in the early 2010s, right? Probably towards like 2014, 2013, something like that. I think a lot of the guys in that lineup have a really good chance to make the cut, but it depends on your intentions, right? You're saying that ownership doesn't matter. It's a smaller field contest. So maybe you're okay with having a top 10% type of lineup in terms of optimal rate. I just don't like doing that, right? My personal strategy is to take the more aggressive approach, but I'm okay with it, right? I don't hate it, but I mean, you heard my take on Paul Casey a little bit before. He's not my favorite play on the slate. I think you could do worse, though. All right, so Chris Kirk, let's talk about him. I know I said I would mention him before. He's in my player pool. I don't particularly love it, though. I think he might come in higher owned than I think. I'm at 10.4% right now. Of course, had the really solid performance at the Honda. So if we go ahead and take a look at that. His recent forms that's really standing out. 7th place at the Honda, 14th at the Waste Management. Unfortunately, before that, he was on a stretch of pretty bad golf. If we take a look at his course history here, it's also ideal. 8th place last year, 15th, 13th. This just seems like a trap, right? So that's why I say he's in my player pool, but I don't feel good about it. It just seems like something's going to fall through the floor, right? I mean, he does have missed cuts at this event in the past. As you can see on here, he had missed the cut back in 2017. The shots gained metrics of late also look really good. So he's going to be in my player pool. I'm going to play Chris Kirk this week, but something feels wrong here. Like I would not be surprised if he goes out there and misses the cut by like 10 strokes. Just I have this weird feeling about it. And again, you don't make decisions in DFS based on feelings. That's why I'm playing him. But I have that weird nagging feeling in my stomach. Eric Van Rooyen at $7,400 is a very high upside play. Same thing with Kevin Na. Kevin Na is going to win an event pretty much every single year. It's just trying to guess when that's going to be. And a lot of times Kevin Na wins at golf courses he has no business at winning at. And I think a lot of people would qualify this course as that, right? It's relatively long. A lot of the bombers tend to have success here. But remember, guys like Francesco Molinari have won here in the past. Martin Laird. Those aren't long bombers by any means. So some guys that are more accurate off the tee, guys that can really lean into that long iron play. And despite his lack of length, Kevin Na is excellent with the long irons from that 175 to 200 yard range. Maybe not so much from the 200 plus yard range, but we're not going to have perfect players down low. See if there are any questions in chat. Yes, we do. Chandler says, who are you pivot off of Kiz down low? So you're talking about Kazire. We'll talk about that when we get into the 6K range, but I'm still playing Kazire. He's still in my player pool. He's just a little bit chalkier than I was kind of hoping. And I know that you're asking that because earlier you asked me, like the guy I was really high on at the beginning of the week that I'm kind of simmering down on. I still like Kazire. I just don't like him nearly as much. I thought he was going to be 3 to 4% owned. I thought I was going to be able to take him in like 15 to 20% of my lineups and get a ton of leverage. It's looking like that's going to be like twice the field. So I'm just not as excited about the play. I was really hoping we were going to get some leverage there. And Colin James says, can Ricky Fowler kind of get his shit together? Ooh, no. I'm just going to give you the short answer. No, I don't think it happens. Casey said he finished 10th last year, not a decade ago. Are we sure about that? Did I misread that? Yes, he did. So yeah, that was his only finish. Right? Then he did the 41st. I mean, dude, that's a one-off performance. The last time he played here was 4 years before that. So again, I understand you can play Paul Casey. I'm not making your lineup for you, man. I just don't like the play. And he says, please talk about Lanto. We will, man. We're going to talk about him in about 5 seconds. And I talked about him on my value plays video. He's one of my favorite values on the week. So we'll definitely talk about Lanto Griffin. And Chris Palmer has his lineup down here, and it looks like a very solid lineup. Casey, if you're going to use him in cash, you're looking for somebody to make the cut. I think he's your guy. Like I said, I just don't think he has that top 5 potential. In top 10, he did it last year, but I think that's about as good as he's going to do. All right, let's keep moving on down the board. Tom Hoagie's a really solid play. I just want to show you guys this because it's absolutely ridiculous. So if we go to the last 24 measured rounds, we organize this and sort this by approach play. Look who sorts to the top. You have Jon Rahm, Will Zalatoris, Tom Hoagie. Pretty solid, right? Go to the last 50 measured rounds. So you go, okay, that might have been a small sample size type of thing, right? It's just the last few events. He has a win in there. Tom Hoagie's been playing really good of late. Sort this by the last 50 measured rounds. Look who's number 1 in the field. Tom Hoagie. I don't think anybody would have expected that, but he's been the best iron player in this field over the last 3 to 4 months at this point. So Tom Hoagie's success of late is far from an aberration. In fact, that's probably what we should have expected to happen sooner based on his shots gain profile. So we'll be playing him at this golf course. He doesn't fit the distance profile that I'm looking for. Of course, he's relatively short off the tee, but he's won at golf courses in the past, or I shouldn't say he's won at golf courses. He's competed at golf courses in the past. He's been in contention before at relatively long venues, like a US Open, like a PGA Championship, where he's been in the final group with Tiger Woods at both of those events before. So to get to the final group of a US Open, it means you were playing damn good that week in those difficult conditions. So I do like Tom Hoagie here. Again, the iron play has just been on a different world. Keegan Bradley is also very solid with the long irons, very accurate off the tee. Last year, right around this point of the year, much like a Cory Connors, went on a really hot stretch of golf. In fact, he started to gain strokes on Bermuda grass for about 2 to 3 months last year. That's when he started posting these top 10s, top 20s, seemingly week in and week out. Capped off by the near win at the Valspar Championship. So I do like going to Keegan Bradley. I think that there's something to be said with the familiarity on Bermuda grass. Same thing with Siwoo Kim, very good on Bermuda for his career. You can see he's losing, but that's better than all the other surfaces. He's a much bigger loser on surfaces like POA, bent grass especially. Ian Poulter, he fits that accuracy off the tee, get it done with getting up and down, be a really hot putter on Bermuda grass type of build. He obviously doesn't have the most recent form because we haven't seen him on the PGA Tour all that much. But if we take a look at his course history here, a bunch of made cuts, right? 26th, 32nd, 23rd, 41st, 41st. So if you're looking for somebody to make the cut, he's probably your guy. I do question his top end upside though. So at $7,200 in large field GPPs, probably not my favorite option, but somebody I'll be mixing in. Lucas Glover, I absolutely love at $7,200. I don't love the putting on Bermuda, but I do like the course history here. It's a little bit underrated. 66, not really anything to write about. He at least made the cut there. He has a missed cut, but look at this, a 10th, a 7th, a 49th. So he's made 4 of his 5 cuts here at the Arnold Palmer. The recent form also looks a little bit better than he's getting credit for. So if we go down here, find Lucas Glover, 30th, 37th missed cut. So it doesn't look all that great, but look at the shots gained metric. So it's over that same stretch down here. And this is why he's kind of being underrated this week. He's gaining over half a stroke per round on approach. The putter's been bad as per usual, but he's kept it together off the tee. He's kept it together around the green. And if he can go out there and have a decent week with the putter, which is kind of asking a lot from a Lucas Glover, he has a ton of upside. But even if he doesn't, he goes out there and does his usual thing with the putter, bleeding strokes. He should still make the cut. So I like his floor at the very least, and he has upside if he can flip that putter. It's the same thing we said about Luke List when he went out there and won over there on the West Coast. So I'm not saying he's going to go out there and win, but he has that same type of profile. Nato Griffin, I know we just had a question about him. Absolutely love him this week. The course history is surprisingly good, right? 2 made cuts out of his 2 trips here. We take a look at the recent form. It's also been pretty decent. Bunch of made cuts, a 16th at Pebble Beach. I think he's being a little bit too steamed. You can see I have him at 8.3% ownership, which is higher than most of the guys in this range outside of a Sebastian Munoz, also Sepp Straka up there. But I'm willing to eat that. I think he's a solid play. He's top 20 recent form rank, top 35 in terms of his fit at Bay Hill. And on Bermuda grass, that has been his best surface too. So see if there's any questions down in chat. And he says, in Thigala, great point, Timothy. I think Thigala is one of my favorite plays down in this lower 7K range. So we'll talk about him in about a second, but I think he's a much better player than people are giving him credit for. And he says, any Cage Lee love? I do like Thigala a little bit more. So let's just go ahead and talk about the two because I kind of want to lump them together. I'm going to Sahith Thigala over Cage Lee. And the main reason is Sahith, I know it's a small sample size, right? He's only been in the PGA Tour for a few months now, but he's been really good with those long irons from the 175 to 200 and the 200 plus yard buckets, especially out of the rough. He's one of the best players in the world. Again, small sample size, but we got to use what we have available to us. Also on Bermuda grass, he's a very good putter, gaining nearly half a stroke per round. So of course has no course history, hasn't played this event before, but the recent form has been there. He made a cut here, finished 48th, made a cut, finished 3rd at the Waste Management. This MDF, he made the cut at Pebble Beach, just they only let the top 58 players or whatever end up playing on Sunday. And they also made the cut over there at the Farmers. So he's made his last 4 cuts. He does have a top 5 finish there. I think he should be closer to $7,500, $7,600 on this slate. And he's also relatively low owned, right? I have him at 5% ownership. I love Sahith Thigala, Cage Lee. I'm a little bit less prone to use just because of the putting. I'd expect their ball striking from a Cage Lee and Thigala to be relatively similar. But of course, the putter with Thigala is the X factor there. So that's why I'm pivoting to him. Hopefully that gives you an idea. Joe Hoffman says, how do you feel about targeting a 6K guy based on tee time? So yeah, like I was saying before with the split, I think it should be right around a 0.3, 0.4 shot split, which is pretty significant, right? You're only talking about a 2-round difference, and it's almost half a stroke, especially for the guys down low, right? I don't think you should be basing all of your decisions on the 9 and 10K guys just based on the tee time. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. With your guys down low, that can certainly be something that breaks ties. So if you say you have 2 guys that you're trying to decide between, but one's teeing off in the PM AM stack, I would go with that guy. So I think that's a really good way to look at it, Joe. Really sharp take right there, if I have to say so myself. Chris says he had Scott originally, but he went out to Horschel, especially with the putter thing. I mean, I was already off of Adam Scott, but if he's changing that long putter, oh boy. Kyle Miller says, I remember the 6K Tom Hoagie days. Yeah, dude. And I think his price is going to continue to go up. I think he could legitimately be in like the 20 to 30% range at some point in some of these tournaments. I mean, if he was like 7K in this event, like we've seen in the past, probably would be extremely chalky. So yeah, man, Cameron Young might be on that same type of trajectory, right? Cameron Young 100% might end up being like $8,500, extremely chalky from week to week, all that sort of fun stuff. All right, Justin either says Aaron Rye for a top 30, hopefully as low as I go. Like I said, he's consistent. He's making a ton of cuts, so I think that makes a lot of sense. You got Forbes down in chat just spewing random words, apparently. Joe Hoffman says, when Luke calls you sharp, hey, man, it was a sharp take. I absolutely like that. I don't think you should be making decisions that they're 9 and 10K guys, though, which is why you said that. So I think that's important to note, because I think a lot of people overreact when it comes to weather, particularly when it's only going to be like a 0.3 shot difference, right? It's not going to be like it's a 2-3 shot swing from that one wave to the next wave. So definitely. All right, let's keep going a little bit further down the board. So we talked about Heath. We talked about Cage Lee a little bit. Sebastian Munoz at $7,000. He's going to be a chalky play. He's really good with those long irons. He's been touted by 4 or 5 different sites to this point of the week. So I get he's going to be chalky, but I understand the play. I'm also going to be on it. The recent form's also been there. So we take a look at Sebastian Munoz, 21st at the Genesis, 23rd at Waste Management, 39th at the Farmers Insurance Open. Just been consistent, and that's usually not what we see from a Sebastian Munoz. And he's more of a popper, right? He's a very aggressive player, extremely high in birdie or better percentage. So we'll be playing him this week, but it is a little bit risky. If you don't like to eat ownership down low, you don't want to play some of these chalky guys in the 7K range, completely understand it, but I will be. Thomas Peters, no one wants to play him after him absolutely shitting the bed a few weeks ago as chalk. He was nearly 20% owned, ended up missing that cut, but this is a great course fit for him. Much like the Genesis at Riviera Country Club, he's good with those long irons. He is a bomber. On Bermuda grass, he's right around neutral, which for Thomas Peters is much better than every other surface. On Poa Nua, he loses over a stroke per round with the putter. So if he can go out there, be right around a neutral in that category, I really do like his chances of having a solid week. Carlos Ortiz is also a relatively low-owned play I like going to. He's always solid on Bermuda grass. He's also, much like a Sebastian Munoz, really good with those long irons. So a little bit of a underrated play that I'm going to. The recent form for Ortiz isn't anything to write home about, but he's made 3 straight cuts, right? 39th, 30th. His 70th place finish was a made cut, just ended up faltering down the stretch. So is somebody I'll be going to in quite a few lineups. A few questions down here in chat, you see. My brother's like spamming chat at this point. Forbes, stop spamming chat. He says, Luke, golf tomorrow. No, I'll call you later. We'll talk about it later. Stop spamming chat. Let's catch up on a few of these other questions here. Ali Bro says, Woodland, Thigala, or Merritt, need to pick one. I would go with Woodland. He's the more expensive of the 3 there, but I think he's also my favorite play of the 3. And if you were going to spend down, let's say that you really like the salary savings for one of those and you could spend up for somebody you really like. Of the guys farther down the list, I do like Thigala more than Merritt. Justin says, I'm only use Rye with a Rory Rombild. Makes sense, right? If you really like those 2 guys up top, that makes a whole lot of sense. Do I 150 max every single week? Absolutely. I usually 150 max for every showdown slate as well. Depends. Usually not for Thursday showdown, but I'll do it for the other showdown slates. Chandler says, thoughts on Buckley. We'll get to him here in a second. This is a much better golf course for him than what we've seen over the last few weeks. So I think he could have a lot of success here. Merritt seems like he could pop here. Yeah, we'll talk about Troy. He's been on a really, really solid stretch of golf. Colin James says, what is your highest owned player? I'm usually just a single entry guy, but trying to get 60 lineups in the $5. That's a good strategy, right? You don't always have to 150 max. You can put in 50 to 60 lineups. I've done that as well. But my highest owned player as of right now is John Rahm, 40%. I really want to try and get leverage on that. Timothy says Fitzpatrick or Hideki. Hideki. Yeah, I really like Hideki there. And Justin says, I like your Ortiz call. Thank you. And a single-digit winner. All right, let's take a look at it. Let's sort this by ownership and give you guys our single-digit winner. So projected ownership. All right, so let's go down to the single-digit range. Sam Burns, real easy for me. Short and sweet. It would be Sam Burns 100%. I think if he turns it around this weekend, that's certainly in the cards. He has a lot of win equity. So I've bet him in the outright market as well. He's one of the few bets I've placed this week. Yeah, single-digit winner would be Sam Burns. Not even close. All right, Joe Hoffman says, just to ask about the weekend wind as well. So yeah, we don't know anything about the weekend wind, unfortunately, just because it's a little bit too early. All of the wind sources that I look at don't project the wind on 2 to 3 days out. So we're going to have to take a look at it. Kyle says it looks windy in the weekend. It might per the forecast, but if you know anything about Florida weather, it is very, very gnarly down here. It'll change from hour to hour. Sometimes they have a hard time even guessing what's going to look like next hour. When I was going golfing today, it said it was going to be raining for the entire afternoon from like 1 to 3 p.m. I got there for my 1 p.m. tee time and it stopped raining for the rest of the day. So sometimes they have no idea what they're talking about. So I would wait a little bit closer to lock on that. All right, let's get through this 6K range. Where did I leave off? All right, it was up here with Carlos Ortiz. We did have that saved there. All right, so Aaron Wise, he's burned me over these last few weeks, but now he's only 2.6% owned. So I'm not jumping off of the Aaron Wise train. I've been very vocal about his game. I think he's going to win once this year. So if he's going to be 2.6% owned, only $6,900, I will have over the field, but it's going to be like 7 to 10%. It's not going to be anything crazy. He's certainly a high risk play, but also a really high upside play. You guys can see my my thoughts on Dylan Fratelli. Fade him. He's a douchebag. If you are just hopping in here, the reason why he's a douchebag is he hit an Arnold Palmer sacred spot on the range that's set up for him that nobody's supposed to even stand in. And he's done that 2 years in a row now. Last year, if you guys want to see what he did last year after doing that, he missed the cut. So he made the cut his first time year when he didn't do that blasphemous thing. Finished 18th, which is actually pretty nice. I actually wanted to play Dylan this week because he made the cut last week at the Honda. His game fits this golf course excellently, but not if he's going to do that. I legitimately, again, you don't want to make decisions based on this stuff, but you don't do that type of thing. And yeah, it's enough to make me fade him. He's a douchebag. Kevin Strowman at $6,800 is really solid with the long irons. I'll be going there. His recent form is absolute crap, but that's also why we're getting him at 1.7% ownership. So I'll have him at about 5 to 6% of my lineups, which again, some of these guys down low, it's not like they're conviction plays for me, right? There's a reason why I'm only using him in 5 to 6% of my lineups. But at the same time, if Kevin Strowman goes out there and does his usual thing off the tee, keeps himself in play, hits those long irons, could be an intriguing option this week. Let's move down a little bit further. Nick Taylor's very solid with the irons. In fact, over his last 24 measured rounds, has really started to separate himself in that department, gaining nearly half a stroke per round, very close to what Adam Svensson's doing. The thing with Nick Taylor is he has a much larger sample size. So the two Canadians there, if you want to take the two Canadians in the same lineup, maybe go ahead and do that. But I like Nick Taylor a little bit more. Garrett Higo won. That was at, what's the name of that golf course? Wherever they played the Palmetto Championship, Congaree is the name of that golf course. It's the only time they're going to play it on tour. So it's not like I'm putting that much effort into remembering it anyways. But that was a golf course where you had to be accurate off the tee. You had raised green surfaces, a lot of undulation, relatively difficult golf course. And Higo ended up winning there. We saw him make the cut last week. He was in the top 5 at one point in the golf tournament. Ended up having a 3-hole stretch where he shot 6 over par. Pretty much ejected himself from the tournament, but ended up fighting back by the end. What did he end up finishing last week? Ended up finishing 66. So that blow up took him completely out of it. But on Saturday, he was in like 5th place. So you can see the blow up did end up happening. But, you know, at one point in the golf tournament, he was in the top 5. He was somebody you absolutely had to have in lineups. And he's won at Congaree, a golf course that I would use as a comp here. It's not one of my top 5 comps, but it's at least in the top 10 on tour for things I'd use to compare. Aaron Rye, you can see I have him down as a blank. I don't love the play. I don't love the upside. You take a look at the recent form, it'll become really apparent. I mean, 66, much like a Garrett Higo, 61st, MDF, hardly made the cut there at Pebble. The 6th place at the Farmers is really what everyone remembers. That's why a lot of people want to play Aaron Rye, but I don't hate the play. I just don't love the play either. Lee Hodges is not somebody I'm playing. Cam Davis will be somebody I'm playing. He's really solid with the long irons. He's an aggressive player. He's also very inaccurate off the tee, but he is a bomber. He's also somebody that we hit at 150 to 1 when he ended up winning earlier this year at the Rocket Mortgage. And this is a very different golf course, but it's also a golf course that emphasizes long iron play and also emphasizes getting the ball out there a long way, being a bomber. And he does fit both of those bills there. He's also 1.5% owned. I believe the recent form is atrocious. I believe this is why he's as low owned as he is. Yeah, 48th, missed cuts 56, which for Cam Davis is much lower than what we're expecting for him. But he's a much higher pedigree player than a lot of the other guys in this range. And if you take a look at his long-term stats, so if we go to the last 50 measured rounds, I imagine they look a lot better than his short-term stuff. Yeah, they do, right? They start to get more towards the positive. He's a slight loser on putting. He's a gainer around the green, gainer off the tee like you would expect with his distance. The approach play is sure a little bit inconsistent, but when he brings those long irons to the table is when he has that success. All right, let's catch up on chat. I'm sure there's a bunch of things down here. And yes, there are. Let's see. Yeah, okay. I'm just going to block that guy. All right. Justin says, Cam Young or Maverick McNeely? I would go with Cam Young. That's for sure. Timothy says, talk to me. Talk to me about Sam Ryder. Ooh, okay. Good, very sharp point. A lot of people that are looking at Sam Ryder at this point, I really do like the play, especially because he's as cheap as he is. Where is he at? He's like $6,800, right? $6,700. So you see, I have him down as a blank. He'll probably be in my player pool like 3 to 4% of lineups. So that's why I have him down as a blank. He isn't anybody I'm getting significant leverage on, but I do like going to it at $6,800, $6,700. The recent form has been there. Take a look at this: 9th place, 26th, 23rd. That's why I say it's a really sharp play. The recent form has been there. The course history, I'm not even sure he's played here before. He has twice before, miscut 33rd, so that's not really ideal. But look at these shots gained metrics. This is why I say it's such a sharp play. He's gaining around the green, which isn't really something that Sam Ryder typically does. He's also gaining with the putter, which isn't something that Sam Ryder typically does. If there's something that he does consistently on tour, it's hit the approach shots and hit the off the tee shots. So if he continues that short game magic that he's had and he gets back to his true identity, he could do something real special. So I do like that play. The more and more I talk about him, the more and more I like him. Jeremy says, how about Beau Hossler? He's not my favorite play. I like him more on the West Coast. He's more of a POA specialist. So what's his price tag? He's in the $6,700 range. Yeah, $6,700 right here. I'm down as a no. So you can see on Bermuda grass, he gains about 1/10 of a stroke per round, which isn't all that special. My fit at Bay Hill isn't that great either. So let's go ahead and show you why. So we go to the shot gain metrics. This includes that really solid finish at Pebble Beach. Also a few other top 25s over there on the West Coast. You can see it's been almost entirely the putter, right? Around the green it's been a positive, but you can never really rely on around the green to hold your game up. He's been losing on approach, also losing off the tee. So now that he's on Bermuda grass, which historically is his worst surface, are we going to expect him to continue to gain half a stroke per round? So the answer is no, right? On Poa Nua, he gains about 2/3 of a stroke per round on average. So to see the fact that he's gained close to that over the last 24 measured rounds makes sense, right? That's what we would expect from a Beau Hossler on Poa. But over here on the East Coast, on this Bermuda grass, I have some concerns there. So that's why I'm not going to be playing him this week. Hopefully that answers your question. And it's not like he's a super high upside play to begin with, right? He shows up like once a year, posts a top 10, that type of thing. All right, Matthew says, in the morning group, who do you feel could go out there and gain a nice lead and possibly be a first-round leader? Really do like Sam Burns for first-round leader. A few other people I'd consider, mostly guys in the 6K range, like a Pan Kazire. I think he has upside for first-round leader. Usually I try to take shots on first-round leader. Like I'm not going to take a favorite like John Rahm for first-round leader. So some of the guys I'd be taking a shot on, Sebastian Munoz, extremely aggressive. Keegan Bradley has been known to go out there and get a first-round lead from time to time. Cameron Young, I think his game fits that bill very well. He's extremely aggressive. And then Keith Mitchell. And probably that's the highest I would go on the board, right? When you start getting into like 10 to 15 to 1 to be first-round leader, you start to lose a lot of that value, a lot of the reason why you want to be playing those lineups. Let's see, are there any other questions to catch up on? Yes, sorry so chatty. Do not apologize at all. That's exactly why we're here. If you have any questions, I'm more than willing to cover them. He said, do I have an opinion on first-round leader? There we go. You guys were in lockstep there, you and Matthew. So there we go. And Kyle says, any EVR love? Absolutely. So he's up here in the mid 7K range. He's coming in with pretty decent recent form over there on the European Tour, which, again, I don't put that much stock into. He's made some cuts. He had the 39th finish at the Genesis. But most notably, if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, look at this. He's gaining pretty much across the board except for the short game, which you would expect for an EVR, but really solid approach player, really solid off the tee. That's what we're used to seeing from an EVR. The issue is going to be the accuracy. He's somebody who has a magnet in his golf ball for the water. He tends to hit a lot more water balls than most players, which is certainly in the cards this week at the API. But if he can avoid that, I really like his upside. He's also somebody I would take for first-round leader, by the way. He has that type of upside. All right, so let's talk about Pan Kazire. I know I mentioned him a little bit before. I like the play. He's getting towards 10% ownership, though. I was expecting him to be like 2.5%, 3% owned. But it seems like people have caught on. The recent form is really solid. He's really good putter on Bermuda grass. And even though he's missed some cuts of late, so if we take a look at the recent form here, let's go down to Patton. You can see 61st, 10th, missed cut. He has a few missed cuts before the Farmers as well. Take a look at the shot to gain metrics. They haven't been nearly as bad as you would expect for somebody in that circumstance. So look at this, gaining off the tee, gaining significantly on approach. Around the green, whatever we can give him a little bit of a pass for. The real only downside has been the putter, which, again, for Kazire, that's strange. He's usually one of the better putters on tour. So the fact that he gains over half a stroke per round on Bermuda grass, I'm expecting that to rebound. And if that does, the rest of the game stays where it's been for the last 24 measured rounds. He's significantly underpriced. Just it seems like a lot of people realize that, right? The field when it comes to PGA DFS is getting sharper and sharper as the years go on. And like you do in any field, right? The fields are going to progress. And guys like Pan Kazire that would have probably been 1 to 2% owned on slates of past are now going to be 5 to 7% owned. So to get leverage, just make sure you take a little bit more, right? Go to 15 to 20%, that type of thing. Thank you for subscribing, man. Appreciate that. Any love for Wolf? No, I can't do it. He is a pure speculation play. You'd just be hoping that he turns it around because, I mean, his recent form is really, really bad. It's nothing more than speculation. So if you think he turns it around this week, he'd be a great play at that price tag, somebody I would be going to. But at this type of level, not somebody I'm investing in. Because what is he? He's like $7,500. He's not even super cheap. Yeah, he's $7,400. You can see I'm at 5% ownerships, which is more than somebody like a Patrick Reed, believe it or not. It's not all that much less than a Kevin Na or an EVR or even a Luke List. So, I mean, if he was 1% owned, if he was like $6,500, like DraftKings had completely given up on him in terms of his price tag, then I'd be on him. But there's still at least a little bit of ownership there, a little bit of risk involved with a missed cut. So I'll let the 5 to 6% of the field that plays him take on that miscut equity because he has a much higher chance of missing the cut this week than finishing in the top 25. That's for sure. That's almost based on how he's played. Look at the recent form here. As ugly as you can get. Miscut. He did make the cut the Farmers, but it wasn't all that much better. A couple miscuts before that as well. But most notably, it's how he's missing these cuts that's even more concerning. You can see he's losing off the tee, which for Matthew Wolff is something that he never does. He's losing significantly on approach. He's carrying himself with the short game, which is not what he's able to do. It's not what he's consistently doing here on tour. All right, Cameron Champ is a flyer play, but he's extremely cheap. He's really good with the long irons. And about once a year, Cameron Champ is going to go out there and gain with the putter. And when he gains with the putter, he pretty much wins golf tournaments no matter what. Because his off the tee play is going to be top 5 in the field pretty much every time he tees it up. The long iron play is by far his strength when it comes to his approach play. And like I said, it's all about the putter. If he can turn that around, it is a huge thing because when Cameron Champ gains with the putter, he doesn't gain a stroke or two. He gains 5 to 6 strokes. He gains in bunches. So I like playing him in GPPs for that reason. But single entries, higher dollar contests, I'd be avoiding him at all costs. Patrick Rogers has surprising course history. A lot of people wouldn't consider that he even has course history, but he's actually played this golf course 5 times. He has 4 made cuts, including a top 7 finish there in 2018. Of course, the recent form has been pretty decent too. He's made some cuts. He's not the greatest putter on Bermuda grass. You can see he still gains a third of a stroke per round. But when you compare that to his baseline, it is lower than his baseline. So that is something to note. Matt Wallace also has elite course history at $6,400. 3 straight made cuts, a top 6 finish in 2019. I like his upside, despite not having very good recent form. We take a look at it. It's really, really ugly. He's losing on approach, losing off the tee. He's in fact losing across all 4 major statistical categories. So it's kind of in that Sam Burns boat where we're hoping you're getting a little bit of a bounce back here. But if he does, he has immense upside. He's really good with those long irons historically. Charles Howell III, I like the accuracy. I like the fact that he's good with those irons. Lucas Herbert, same exact story. He's also really good on Bermuda grass. Of course, he hasn't played this golf course before, but if you take a look at Herbert, I believe it's a bunch of missed cuts. It is. So 2 missed cuts out of his last 5. But if you remember there in the fall swing, he had that win over there at the Bermuda Championship. So he's not that much removed from having that ceiling performance. Hudson Swafford, I'm not playing. Danny Lee has a top 5 at this event? Yeah, top 5 in 2020, 17th in 2017, 49th last year. Course history just a lot better than you would expect with a Danny Lee. Brendan Grace, he's always good at difficult golf courses. So we have wind on Friday. We might have wind on Saturday and Sunday as well. So if we get that, Brendan Grace become more and more attractive. Michael Thompson's really good at these Florida golf courses when you got to be accurate off the tee. Let's catch up on some chat. Looks like we have a few comments down here, so we'll catch up on them. CBO says, Hoagie or Kirk? That's Hoagie for me. I really like the approach play, getting nearly 0.8 of a stroke per round. Have you said what you would like for early prize picks yet? I do actually have a video on my channel. So if you go ahead and click on my channel, it's about the second or third video I last uploaded for my round one prize picks targets. That's what you want to check out. I've done a whole breakdown on it and whatnot. That's what I would go to. And Corey Graves says it's up on YouTube. Yeah, it's and that's probably the best way to go about it because nothing's really changed since that video. And why am I sipping on? This is just water. It's just some agua right now. When I go to make lineups, it's something I don't want to tell people how to live. When you're making lineups, you should be as clear-headed, as energetic as humanly possible. So I'm not a big fan of the whole drinking, making lineups thing like a lot of other people seem to like to do. That's just not my thing. I want to be as sharp as humanly possible when I'm going through a player pool. Joe Hoffman says it's a little bit of a 2-on-2. So let's see this. I go with the second of the two, just because I think Theegala has a little bit more upside than Zach Johnson. And Kokrak, given his course history, I don't think it's as much of a difference between Leishman and Kokrak as it is between Zach Johnson and Theegala. So I would go with the second of the two options there. And I don't think you can go wrong with either, though. I do like both of them. And Justin says he's got to go. What irons do you play? I play P790 TaylorMades. So they have the tungsten insert in them. They're also really heavy. They tend to be a little bit de-lofted. So I hit my pitching wedge about 145 yards, my 9-iron about 155, 3-iron goes about 230, that type of thing. They're solid irons. They're freaking amazing. You hit them and you're instantly going to hit the ball a little bit farther. Obviously the de-lofting helps with that, but also that tungsten insert. It's by far the best irons I've ever hit. And pretty much everyone that I let use them, including my brother who was down in chat a little bit earlier, says they're the best irons I've ever hit. Let's talk about Hayne Buckley. So I see him down as a no, but the modeling absolutely loves him. So if you're going to blindly follow the numbers, definitely somebody you'd consider playing. But he was in that stretch of form in the fall. It seems like he's kind of fallen off here. If you take a look at the last few events for him, where's Buckley at? I'm blind. There he is. Miscut, 49th. If you take a look at the first 5 events outside of these last 5, it's like top 25, top 25, top 10. So do you think that he's that type of player, or do you think that was just a stretch of golf for Hayden Buckley? For me, I'm not entirely sure. So I'm not really going to be taking one stance or the other. Also because I like Adam Long a little bit more, also Adam Schenk. So both the Adams, more of established prospects here on the PGA Tour, guys that we know are going to play well, particularly Adam Long, who's really solid on Bermuda grass. And the best part about Adam Long's game is that when he makes cuts, the guy goes out there and posts a top finish. So I do like him at $6,100. I also do like him at 0.33 shots gained putting per round on Bermuda grass, 0.5% owned too. I mean, the guy is just being completely overlooked. And while Adam Schenk isn't nearly the same specialist on Bermuda grass, he's popped from time to time, especially towards the end of 2021. Had multiple events where he was finishing in the top 15, and he's only $6,100. So it's more of a pedigree play than anything. Charles Schwartzel and Scott Stallings, I'm probably going to have like 1 to 2 lineups with them in it. They fit the golf course, but of late have been playing like absolute crap. Steven Yeager is a good course fit as well. He missed the cut at the Honda Classic, though. Davis Thompson, actually, did he miss the cut, or did he just like finish dead last? It was one of the two. Yeah, he was just like finished dead last. He ended up making the cut, but he shot like +8 on the last day or something like that. Davis Thompson, he's a really good up-and-coming prospect. Just we don't really know his game at this point. I'm going to have him like a lineup or two. Henrik Norlander, I see he's in my player pool, but I just don't love the play. I know somebody before mentioned him as a potential flyer. He's good at these difficult golf courses. I'm going to have him in like a few lineups, right? Like 1 to 2 lineups. Kevin Tway is that same type of thing. So I know before I mentioned that I liked a few guys more than him. The guys that I like more are first off Kevin Tway. I also like going up here to Adam Long a whole lot more. Of course, there's $100 difference, but I do think that they have higher upside. Let's go ahead and talk about Kevin Tway. Kevin Tway is really good at difficult golf courses. If you take a look at his shots gained metrics, he's really good around the green, which would surprise you for some of these guys down low. It hasn't really looked like that over the last 24 measured rounds. But if you take a little bit of a zoom out, give him a little bit more of a sample size to deal with here. It's much closer to even. He's gaining a ton with the putter off the tee. He's a loser, but that's usually due to distance. Due to accuracy. He has that distance. So if we take a look at his rank over here, do we even have it yet? Yeah, we do. So he's 43 on tour in terms of driving distance, which is one of the best of any of these guys down low. In fact, the next guy would be Trey Mullinax, who's above him. And Mullinax hits the ball freaking country mile. The guy is one of the longest hitters on tour. But down here at 43, that's more than respectable. He's somebody who has that putter working on Bermuda grass. It's not his favorite surface, but he's showing up from time to time. He'll do it about once a year. He'll post a top 5, top 10, that type of thing. He's only $6,000. So, you're getting what you're paying for here at some point. But will be somebody that I have in a few lineups. And then, of course, Norlander, like I said, he's good at difficult golf courses, but he's about the least sexy play as humanly possible here on this slate. I mean, nobody likes playing Henrik Norlander. At one point in 2021 for the Memorial Tournament, I think he was like 15% owned. He was also like $8,500. Of course, went out there, ended up missing the cut. That he will never be in that range again. I can promise you that. People learned their lesson big time. All right, let's catch up on chat, and then we'll hop into some strategy talk and then get on out of here. Top spend up, John Rahm for me, for sure. Joe Hoffman says, do you look at who tees off in the first tee versus the 10th tee for showdown? It depends on the golf course. Sometimes there's going to be an edge there, particularly if there's like a par 5 at the beginning of one of the 9s and a par 5 at the end of the other. You might be able to streak together one of those birdie streaks. But at this course specifically, that's not the case. A lot of the par 5s are in the middle of the round. They're not on hole 1 or anything like that. There is a par 5 on hole 16, but it's not close enough to the ending, right? There's not like there's a par 5 on hole number 1 or something like that. And Craig says, what do you think about Denny McCarthy? I think he's an average play. I just question his upside. He doesn't really have the ball striking acumen that I'm looking for. Really solid putter on Bermuda. If you're looking for a cut maker, somebody that's not going to get themselves in much trouble, he might be the guy for you, but not sure he has the upside I'm looking for. And he says Matsuyama. JP says Matsuyama. I do like Matsuyama. I have him down as one of my sleeper picks this week. I think that it really comes down to the putting. At this golf course, he's been an atrocious putter over the last 4 to 5 years. But the ball striking has always been there. And over his last 24 measured rounds, he's gaining with the flat stick, which is, we never say that about Hideki Matsuyama. So if he continues that, he brings that ball striking to the table as he usually does at this golf course. Definitely really like that. Jeremy says, okay, subscribed. Hey, appreciate that, man. How about Nick Wayne? Do you mean Nick Watney? I'm assuming you mean Nick Watney. So let me go find him. I'm sure he's down here in the 6K range. I don't have him in my player pool. I can tell you right off the bat, I don't have him in the player pool. But let me find Nick Watney. There he is. All right, so he's at $6,000, so he's at the bottom of the board. He's a little bit cheaper than I thought he would be. He made the cut last week. Let's see, what did he end up finishing? Here you go, 30th, 55th. Here's the thing with Nick Watney, right? I'm not sure I'm a believer in him long term. He's had a few made cuts of late, but even when he's had a weak field, he went out there and played the best golf we've seen from Nick Watney in about a year. He finished 30th. So I'm going to be off of Nick Watney. I think last week was probably the best week we were going to have for him, but yeah, he's probably not my favorite play on the slate. All right. So any chance we can see Chunky? Yes, the other cat. You know what? I'm going to open the door. I'll come back. And if she comes in, I'll pick her up. But she hides. She doesn't always come out. She's not always the most friendly cat. What are the odds of Woodland missing the cut in your opinion? Good thing we don't have to make it an opinion. We have the metric over here on the right we can take a look at. I have them making the cut 67.94% of the time. So that puts them at a 32.06% chance of missing. Sorry. Yeah, 32.06% chance of missing the cut. So about a 3% chance. So if you're getting odds on the sports book where you can get them like plus 300 or plus 350, whatever you can get, maybe worth a look there. But yeah, that's what this category here is for. This is about as accurate as I can get on this, by the way. The projected cut rate, obviously it's volatile, and you're going to have guys that are really high cut rates that are going to miss the cut from time to time. But if you take a look at these cut rates and compare them to the end of season numbers, they're going to be extremely accurate. I back tested them for 2021, and it was actually by far my most accurate projection. The least accurate projection is projected points. That is by far the most volatile of all the categories. But with projected cuts, we did really good in 2021. Of course, model ranking, all this isn't really quantifiable. We can't really back test it because it's a quantifying basis, but we could do it with some of these other numbers. And the back testing for the projected cut rate is one of the best tools that we have here on the channel. And any stay away from players? Great question. So really short questions tonight, guys. I'm loving it. You guys are asking some really good questions when it comes to strategy. For me, that is Victor Hovland. He's a stay away player for me. I think he's a little bit higher owned than he should be. Also, Paul Casey. I think he's getting far too much ownership than he should be, given the upside he brings to the table, which isn't all that much. Usually when he makes cuts, he doesn't really do anything special with it, unless it's at the Valspar Championship where he won like 2-3 times. Christian Mazainhout also is somebody I'm staying away from. It's that same type of story. I question his ability to win or finish in the top 5 here. He has 2 performances at Bay Hill, and they're both great, right? So that's why he's getting a lot of this attention. An 18th and a 7th place finish. That's also only a 2-year sample size. And we know golf can be volatile. There's guys that have had 2 good events at an event and then completely fallen off the board and missed cuts. So those would be my stay away players for you. All right, let's go ahead and hop into the DraftKings side. And we're just going to quickly go over some strategy. We're not going to spend a ton of time over here because we've already gone for about an hour and a half, much longer than we're usually going up here for the channel. But, you know, we have some great questions. There's a lot of good chat going on. So not going to cut it off early. Have you tried any lines with 2 guys at $9,900 and up and liked it? Yes, absolutely. There's actually lines where I've had Jon Rahm and Rory Mcavoy in them, and I really like it. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and just make a lineup. Let's show you what I'm talking about with that. So you don't think you have to take both guys up top. I really do like Jon Rahm. I don't think you have to force in a Rory McIlroy. Like I said before, I really like Sungjae M. Also really like Hideki. Let's go ahead and use Sungjae. I know you said $9,900. I'm assuming that was by design so that we could use Sungjae M there. So let's go ahead and pair both of those players together. Unfortunately, by taking 2 players up top, it does limit us to not taking any of these 9K guys. So we can't take a Leishman or Fitzpatrick, who I do really like on this slate, but that would be far too much opportunity cost. We could consider somebody in this 8K range. I mean, option number 1 for me would be a Keith Mitchell. That puts us at $6,800 remaining per player, which means this is certainly a top-heavy lineup. But out of my set of 150, this will certainly be a build that I have. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So I usually like to build from the bottom up. When we're talking about a studs and duds type of lineup, go ahead and take our guys down low first. So I know I mentioned before that Brendan Grace under some difficult conditions would make a whole lot of sense. Because we're taking a Jon Rahm and a Sungjae Im, players that have a lot of success under difficult conditions, correlating that with one of our guys down low could make a lot of sense. That leaves us at $7,100 remaining, which gives us all the flexibility that we're looking for. You can take somebody in this high 6K range. A few guys that I've been considering. I mean, Kevin Strowman, we talked about a little bit before. Carlos Ortiz, also a really high upside play. Because we're taking Jon Rahm, who's going to be lower owned than Rory McIlroy, Sungjae M, who's going to be one of the lower owned guys up top, I'm okay taking the chalk in Sebastian Munoz. Like I said, he's going to be relatively chalky, but we're taking some pivots already, so we don't have to worry about ownership nearly as much. And that leaves us at $7,300. Or really, it's a no-brainer for me. You either take Tom Hoagie or you take Ian Bradley. And I'm going to take Keegan because he's one of my core plays for this week, but I don't think you could go wrong slamming in Hoagie as well. So yeah, that's what that lineup would look like. It's a little bit, you have to go into the low 6K range, or at the very least, you have to go into the high 6K range. But it's not like you're taking guys at $6,000 with 2-3 spots in your lineup, right? So it's much more doable than I think you might expect. All right. Let's go ahead and make a cash lineup now, and then we're going to go ahead and hop on out of here. So for cash, we're just trying to take the chalk, right? In terms of the chalk, it's Rory McIlroy. It's not even close. His worst finish here is a top 10 in his last 5 years. In the 9K range, Matt Fitzpatrick makes sense. He's that chalk that we're eating in that 9K range. Really solid player. Same thing with Keith Mitchell. I think he's almost a must play when it comes to cash contests. That leaves us at $7,200, which there's plenty of flexibility here. And then Cameron Young would also be a cash play du jour. We can go with Lanto Griffin, who's also one of my favorite cash plays on the slate. And with their $7,000 remaining, Sebastian Munoz, just chalk monster all over. This lineup right here is a lineup I would never enter into a large field contest. Even though all of these guys are in my player pool, you would never see me playing this combination. I mean, you're going to be duplicated with like 4 to 5 people at the very least. Some of these large field contests, whether it's the 50 cents of GPP or the $5 GPP or even the $20 pitch and putt GPP, this will be duplicated. I can pretty much guarantee you that. So this is what we would be going with for cash. So we'll see if there's any questions down in chat. Doesn't look like there are. So with that being said, we'll wrap this up. I appreciate you guys for stopping by. Any of you guys that haven't liked the video already, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. We'll have showdown content coming throughout the weekend. Look forward to that right around 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be going live on Friday and Saturday night to get you ready for those slates. Also for Thursday, tomorrow night. And we'll have prize picks content for all the other slates. And of course, you guys completely covered for the players. I will be going to the Players Championship. I will be there in person. So I'm really looking forward to that. And Chandler, I'm going to go get the chunky cat. So I'll be back in 1 second. All right. So I know everyone wanted to see this. Everyone in the Discord has seen this cat before. This is one of the fattest cats you've probably ever seen, but one of the most adorable cats you've probably ever seen. And she's, as you would expect, very immobile because of her size. So I kind of got to help her on to things, that kind of stuff. But she's on special diets to lose weight. She's trying at the very least, but it's her genetics. The vet has already said we've tried to have her lose weight for quite some time, hasn't worked. So she just looks like that, is what it is. But Chandler says thoughts on power. I'm okay with power, but I like him more next week at the Players. So because of that lack of distance, I won't be playing Seamus Power for this week. But at TPC Sawgrass, I sure as heck will. Good luck for all of your lineups for this week, guys. And let's get this cash.